Hi everyone, thank you for tuning into the JPI's fundraising livestream. This is a quick reminder for you to click the link in our description box below and donate to our COVID-19 crowdfunding campaign in association with Give India, Uplift, Ujala Foundation, and BCI alumni.
Today, we are joined by Carnegie Mellon graduate Shashank Goyal, currently a software engineer at Google. Going into university, Shashank had never even programmed or even seen a line of code in his life. However, during his first semester at CMU, he took the Fundamentals of Computer Science course and realized his true passion. After a few semesters of programming, he landed a software engineering internship at Google, where he built a prototype chat application, which, when deployed, would be built into every single Android phone. Eventually, he was able to secure a full-time software engineering position at Google. And now, today, he's here with us. Over to you, Aryan.
Shashank Bhaiya, Ayush sir has told us that you're always one of a kind, always giving examples of you and how exceptionally bright a student you were, not just in academics, but in very diverse ways. So, if it would only be inspirational for us high school students to listen to the three stages of your life, beginning from school all the way through college and actually landing a job in Google, like one of the dream places for any software engineer to be in. So, could you talk about these three stages of your life, how similar, how different they were, and what were the key learnings that you got from them?
Mhm. Thank you so much for the great introduction, guys. And Ayush sir has always been wonderful. Yeah, so I feel like the three stages are quite broad. They're very different experiences and stages in one's life, and the process and like I guess the learnings can be quite different. So the first stage I think you mentioned is high school, and I think in some ways like high school and college as stages in life are quite structured. You kind of know what you need to do in high school. You're like, okay, these are the classes that I'm taking. I need to get a certain grade, do my best to apply to college. So, like the path in front of you is quite like set out. You might not know, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was going to college, but I kind of knew how to get there. Like it's, do your SATs, do your exams, do your take your classes, like talk to you, get good recommendation letters. So I think in high school, my biggest advice is just to like uh you know focus on your academics, get a good foundation, um and also like explore, like have as many extracurricular activities as possible. That was like my approach when I was in high school. It was just like I feel like throughout maybe like the three stages, I'd say like my biggest like takeaway is like don't say no to anything. Whenever like I got an opportunity in high school like to do an MUN or like to go for a debate, I just never said no. And it was a very helpful attitude, I think, just in terms of the opportunities it made me like appreciate and also get the most out of. So I think high school is like, uh, wasn't super like challenging in a way, like it's structured for you, right? So the biggest challenge as a high school student is just motivating yourself, actually like studying for those exams because there's so much more going on in life. Um, and then I think for me, like where a lot of my interesting journey began was after high school. So when I was actually applying for colleges, all I did was like apply to the best program at every university because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I applied for aerospace engineering, I applied for econ at U Chicago, I applied for CS at CMU. Like literally, like looked up the best program in every college and applied to it because I was like, if I get into the best program, then I'll probably like be able to transfer into whatever I want. And then so that's kind of like that's the beginning of my journey, like literally not knowing what I wanted to do, at like not having an inkling, especially like as you guys mentioned in the introduction, I'd never programmed before. So definitely didn't know I wanted to be like a software engineer. And then I actually didn't get into computer science at CMU, which is a pretty funny story. I got into their electrical and computer engineering program. And then again, like I took in the ECE program, you get to do both software engineering and uh, electrical engineering, and I ended up liking programming way more than I liked electrical engineering. So I was like, okay, I definitely have to switch out. Then spent the next 2 years like working hard to switch out, and then like basically like just got really lucky that I ended up at CMU. at one of the premier colleges for software science, like engineering. Had I not gone there, like if I'd gone to any other university, I might have been doing what they were known for, you know? So it's really funny how like a very small decision in life can really shape the rest of your life. Um, at CMU, I would say like one of the biggest advantages is because this university is so well known for um, computer science. It's really easy to be recruited from the university into like actual industry. Like we would have a job fair at the university every year where 150 companies would come, and every tech company that you can think of would have like massive booths there. So like your Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Uber, Lyft, every company that you can think of, like they're out there recruiting and they're trying to entice you to come work for them instead of the other way around. It's not you like trying to like, beg for a job. A lot of times like they'll have like free t-shirts and goodie bags. They're like, hey, just give us your resume and here's a free t-shirt for you, you know. It's a very different equation. I mean, that doesn't mean that you're gonna end up getting a job. That like really only guarantees that like you'll get your foot in the door, and then from there you still have to have like um a bang on resume, like good interview prep. So like there's a lot of like parts to it. We can go into it later. But definitely like I would say the biggest advantage is just like going to a school that's known for the field you're studying, because then it's really easy to be recruited, because those companies already know that the curriculum that you're following and that you have a good background. And so yeah, so I was able to get like a sophomore year internship at a junior year internship at Google, was able to translate that into full time. So it was like pretty smooth sailing. Didn't really even have to recruit. Um, Once I knew that I had a return offer from Google, I think so. Like in college, like what I learned again was just like try and find your passion, try and figure out like what is the best way to learn. Overall, my one big takeaway from college is that when you first get to college, it's really overwhelming, especially like if you're coming abroad. Um, it's like an atmosphere you've never had, and there's like you're just going to be pulled in a lot of directions all the time. Like you'll have so many new friends to make. There's like so many different clubs and organizations you want to join. There's Greek life. There's so it's like finding the balance, like finding what are the things that are important to you, and then still keeping like a wide variety. Like join lots of organizations, do lots of classes, like do lots of again clubs. um, and then as you get through your years of college, you'll like kind of pare down. You'll end up sticking to probably two or three things that you really enjoyed. And then yeah, just have fun, man. And uh, so yeah, college was got my job at Google, and then finally graduating college, I think is like a truly a different phase of life, because as I said about that structure, because even in college you again kind of have this like backward idea of like you just need to study, right? Like you just get your grades. That's the end of the day. Like you get your grades, you have a good GPA, you're probably gonna get a good job. So there's day to day, you don't have to choose how to spend, like how to like structure your time every day. Whereas once you graduate, okay, sure, you have a job, but that's 8 hours of your day. For the first time in your life, once you come back home, you don't have to think about work. You don't have to think about work on a Saturday or a Sunday. Like you're spending 40 to 50 hours at work, but then suddenly like you have another 150 hours in a week that you don't know what to do with, right? So that's the first time where you have to really start asking yourselves questions about, hey, like, so what do I want to do in my life? Like where do I see myself in 5 years? Where do I like what is it that excites me? What is it that gets me out of bed? And like these are questions that I'm still continuing to answer like well into like after having graduated college. um and I mean, just working at Google overall is so wonderful. They give you a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. Like you can kind of come in whenever you want. Now, I mean, now everything is work from home, so you really can start work whenever and work whenever, as long as you're making your meetings. So even when we were going to work, it was like I would show up to work at like 10:30 a.m., which is pretty late. Like leave work pretty late, work out at work, eat, take like an hour long lunch break. It's like all of those are part of the culture. Like you and your entire team will go out and have like a nice long lunch, but it's like kind of how the community structure is built at Google. It's really like even Google campus is very much like a college campus. There's like lots of spread out buildings, lots of cafes, lots of like hangout spots, so you can really just like, and the structure is so flat that like back in the day, back when we could actually like meet people at work, you could literally hit up like a director in your organization and be like, hey man, like I just joined Google, do you think we could get coffee? And then they'd be like, of course, yeah, let's like go get coffee. So it's just like, because of that, it makes working there like very like pleasant experience. You don't ever have to think about like, can I use my voice to voice an opinion, or can I, make a change in my team structure or the way we do a certain thing? If you think it's a good idea and you can sell it, then you can do it. Like, like no one's gonna stop you. In fact, like if they try to stop you, do it anyway and prove it to them why what you're doing is like the way to do something. So it's really like, Google is what you make of it. I would say like, you were given your tasks and projects, but at the end of the day, that's only going to cover like, if you just want to like coast, right? And that's totally fine as well. You do what you're told and you're still going to like move up the corporate ladder and like, get paid a lot of money. But like, if you really want to make the most like out of what I've learned at Google, is that like, just find what's broken and fix it. And I think that's like true for a lot of tech companies, because there's like a lot of things that kind of get thrown under the radar because they like, people don't have enough resources, or they're not like, the team doesn't think it's the right priority. But if you can find like a gap and you can fix it, that's like really how you can set yourself apart and succeed, I think, at Google and at any other really like company you're working at. But yeah, so sorry, that was a big rambling response. I know like it was a long 3 stages, but yeah, if you guys have any specific questions.
I mean, I don't know why you said sorry. We were happy to hear. So
Yeah.
my next question was that you, like, going back to your high school days, you joined our school, I think, in grade 11. How do you think those 2 years of your high school life shaped your career? Like from the
Mhm.
college mentorship to your friends in high school, leaving your friends, going into college, how did it all play a role in your life?
Yeah. Um, So I would say like overall, those last 2 years of high school are definitely the most transformative years anyway. I think it's really like where people come into, their own, they're like starting to learn what are things that excite them, what are things they're passionate about. And what's really cool about JPIS that I felt at the time is that there were a lot of people around me that had very varied passions and interests. And I felt like I got to meet so many of these cool people at school who were interested in lots of different things, and it was really easy to like learn from them, see like what other people are doing. I think like, I'm sure you guys have been mentored by Ayush sir as well. I think he was such a great the whole like organization is really focused on making you the best, like making sure you like are best set for your future. So like, even when it came to like any kind of counseling advice, they were always very hands on. They were like, hey, you should do this, this is going to be the way that like, you can set yourself up for success. I think overall, and IB as well, it really does prepare you very well for what college is going to be like. So I feel like because I had done IB, I felt like there was less of a transition from taking IB classes to taking college classes in some ways. I mean, obviously the structure is different, but the way that the material is taught or structured is not that different. Like, and especially like for me, like when I'd taken math HL in high school, and then I went and took like math classes at college. And for the first year, I actually felt that a lot of the material that I was covering had still been covered in high school. So like, just like a small thing like that. But overall, yeah, I think it's just like the last 2 years where I met a lot of cool people at school. Definitely like one of my really good friends, Aditya Goyal, like I don't know if you guys know him, like he ended up going to Cornell as well. So it was just like so good to be able to bounce ideas off of each other, like to talk about the future. Like it's actually really crazy, but about a year ago, I was just going through my college essays that I was writing in 12th grade. And one of those essays that I wrote about was the question was, what do you think will be the most transformative technology in 30 years? And I had written about a computer that gets implanted into your brain, basically Neuralink. And I had totally forgotten about this essay. And what's crazy is because even now, like 5 years down the line, if you were to ask me that question, I'd still say Neuralink. And it's something that I've been thinking about and like reading research on for so long that I didn't think that this idea had been planted in my head in like 12th grade. I thought it was something, you know, I read after new Elon Musk started it and then started thinking about it. But it's really cool that like I'd already been thinking about some of these things, and then definitely stems from the fact of like the teachers I was around and the students I was around in JPIS.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
so I've actually been to the Google office in Menlo Park, and it's an amazing experience. I went like 5 years ago, and it was just crazy. They let us ride around on bikes and everything, and the Google
Yeah.
logo was like planted everywhere with its colors. It was an amazing experience. I can't even imagine what it's like being an employee. I'm sure it's an amazing.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's very cool. I think the first time you get there, you're definitely like very overwhelmed. Like this is wow, like this is where I'm working. This is incredible. You know, you definitely drink the Kool-Aid. Google's the best company. Can't be better. And they really like do. I think Google's philosophy, like before the pandemic, was let's keep our employees at work for as long as possible. So like any amenity that you can think of, they had it at work. So like they obviously have the free food, which we're known for. So you like I would eat my breakfast, lunch, and dinner at work. So I like didn't have ever have to cook, didn't ever have to worry about food in any way. I would work out at work. Um, and they had like all of these like fitness classes and group classes that you could do. So like all of that is like the standard, like or stuff that other companies also offer. But on top of that, like Google has like laundry for people who lived like close to work would literally bring their laundry into Google campus. They you like go put a load in the washer, like go work on your desk, then like go put it like they basically like anything that someone might have to go and leave work to do. They had like free car rentals on campus. They're like, oh, if you need to go to the dentist, like don't go home and go to the dentist. Like here, take this car and you can go. Like it's just like so many different things where people might have had to take an hour or two away from work, but they're like, if you have to do it, here we'll make it easy for you so you can come back to work ASAP, you know? And they do it in the nicest way, right? Like, cause you in the like I understand that the reason is that the longer I'm at work, the longer I'm working. But at the end of the day, it's also because I'm having fun. Like they have like a rock climbing wall at work. They have a like every building had a pool table and a ping pong table. So there were so many afternoons, if it's like a chill afternoon or you're like waiting for some code to build, you literally like text the guy next to you, be like, hey bro, wanna go play pool. So it's like very much this is what I mean, like when it's like a college campus, right? So Google is definitely like yeah, like in terms of work culture, it's really like I think redefines what work has to be. It doesn't have to be you have to be at your desk 9 to 5 and then you know go home. It's like come here, have fun, and they think that people that are enjoying and having fun are going to be doing their best work. So it's really like a pretty cool place to be.
Definitely. So I had a
Yeah.
question for you. All three of us are budding computer science students, and it can be a little difficult, like choosing what to learn next, because computer science has very diverse applications. So how do you make a decision of what to learn next and stick to it until you're proficient? What kind of advice could you give us on that?
Yeah. So yeah, I think with programming and online learning in general, I think we're starting to face the opposite problem, which is that there's almost too much out there. It's not that we don't have enough resources, we have too many resources. There's too many things trying to grab our attention from all sides. And we need to figure out like what is the right path or yeah, and uh, like how to like stay on the path. So I would say that first of all, obviously for anyone, it's like just like the basics, the fundamentals. You can't escape that. So like just picking any language of your choice and learning the basic syntax, right? You want your if conditionals, loops, uh, uh you know, like data structures, sets, dictionaries, and then if you're getting more advanced, there's like stuff like recursion, object-oriented programming. So I'd say stuff like that is your fundamentals, and the way to practice those fundamentals is to like look up bite-sized problems. So like stuff like for example at CMU in our first semester of programming, they made us like write a Sudoku solver. So you give it a Sudoku board, it outputs a completed Sudoku board. So like bite-sized problems, what they'll help you like achieve is they'll like make sure you like understand those like initial concepts. And once you have initial concepts, I'd say like after one semester. So which means like after 4 months of like learning programming, like diligently, you could probably go out there and make any kind of software you wanted. So then the next part, before you even try to be like, hey, so what do I want to know? Or like, what do I want to learn? Try to find a project for yourself. Try and find like any small thing that you think can be done better by software, and then try to do it. And then what will happen is you'll be like, oh, okay, so I want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it. And then so you will keep asking yourself, okay, so like maybe a quick example, like I was joining this organization at college, and one of the tasks that we had to do to join the organization was we had to email all the brothers like of the organization with like meeting details, and we had to basically send out a personalized email to every brother, like inviting them to an event we were hosting. So like the body was same, but it was stuff like hi, name of brother, and then like all of these details, and then thanks, and like send the email. So all we had to change was like two things. I'm forgetting what the second thing was, but the name of the brother and then one more thing, and then hit send. But this is like we had to do this at like 80 people. And my friends were about to start doing this themselves. I was like, no, 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 wait, hold up. I think I can do that programmatically. And so like, but I'd never sent an email using code in my life before. So you'd kind of just like go and you're like, okay, so Python email libraries, and you'd be surprised. It was like maybe 50 lines of code, maybe not even. And like, so it was like it still took like, I'm not saying I necessarily ended up saving time. It took me like an hour to program it. It probably would have taken someone an hour to send all those emails. But at the end of the day, I had this piece of software that like now every single time I have to send a big chunk of emails, I know I can do it, like, and it's like a very small thing, but we can take like bigger projects, or you can like, if you don't have a specific project in mind, take games. Like games are super easy. Like you could build Tetris yourself, and it's actually like not that hard to do. So games are a really good example where you don't have to have a problem you're trying to solve. You're just trying to make something fun. And the best part is when you can get other people to play your game. It's such a satisfying feeling. Um, Again, like yeah. So I'd made this like pool game back in the day, like I don't even know how long, like 8 years ago now. But yeah, so like getting my friends to play it though, and you see the balls moving around and like actually like being able to pot and score points, and all of those little interactions are really like fulfilling. So I would say like try and find a project, because they'll help you stay motivated, and then also like help you identify what things you're missing in your programming knowledge. Yeah, and then if there's anything specific, I think like websites like Code Academy, Coursera are really good because they'll recommend courses to you. But the one thing that I find at the end of the day is that even when I take a course or like learn something from it, in the moment, yes, I've understood it, but until you start applying it yourself, until you have like a blank slate, you have like this blank software editor, and you're trying to write code in it, and you're like, oh man, what was that thing that I was reading the other day? Like until you like question that, you like won't really like truly integrate that knowledge in, especially with programming, I think.
So, Shashank, Bhaiya, just to follow up to that. So, once I start pursuing a particular application in computer science and I
Yeah.
delve into a lot, one of the major setbacks that we have to go through is sometimes that we never know where the end of the chain is. Like I can delve into that particular field as much I want to, and
Mm-hmm.
probably I want to revolutionize something in that application for computer science, but we never know when the end of the chain actually is. So,
Could you give me an example if possible? Like,
for example, I am proficient in Python, then I get into stock trading, then I get into predictive analysis of stock prices. And so this just keeps going on. So should I be sticking to that particular computer science application or branch out into other fields? Because I never know when that chain of me going
okay,
delving deep and deeper
got
into
it.
that will end.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a good question, and I would say the answer depends on our goal. So basically, if the goal is to get better at computer science, then I would say that at some point you will know when to stop, because at some point you will stop learning more programming technicalities and you'll start learning more stock technicalities. So like as you said, like stock trading in itself is actually a good application, again, because it like teaches you predictive analysis. It's teaching you some sort of like statistics. It's teaching you how to model statistics in like Python. It's teaching you how to handle data, how to backfill data. So like it's definitely teaching you a lot and how to like use programming to take structured data and like get some output out of it. So I think it's like a really good project. But at the end of the day, what's going to start happening is that you're going to have some basic predictive model and you're like, oh, but I actually want to use this to trade stocks and make money. So what you'll start end up doing is you'll start looking into, okay, so how do stocks work? What are good predictive engines? How can I tune my model to like do better? And at some point you'll have stopped programming and you'll have started stock trading. Does that make sense? Like so, and it's not, yeah, it's not a bad thing. Like if your goal is to make money with your stock trading software, I would say like keep going at it. Like stock trading might be a bad example because no one knows if you're gonna make money. But like if there's an application that's really like you're passionate about, then like keep going deeper into it. But know that just like that, going deeper into it is not necessarily teaching you programming anymore. But I think it's still an important exercise. But you will yourself know at what point you've stopped like learning about programming, and at that point maybe time to find a new project. Yeah.
So talking about projects, like there have been several apps, several minor projects that have been developed by Google employees leaving Google. For example, WhatsApp.
Mhm.
Are we getting something from you soon, like in 2-3 years?
Yeah, I mean that's a question I think is on has been on my mind for a long time, and I think a lot of engineers that work at Google, because as a little aside, I'll tell you why I loved computer science. Because like in all other sciences or technology or engineering in general, to go from like thought to idea to conception, that timeline is usually months, if not years, depending on what industry you're in. So for example, when Elon Musk thought of the first Tesla, he thought about it like in 2002, and the first car was launching in 2012, and then like the company is going profitable in 2020. So like there's this like 18-year buffer that he had to really like struggle through to get his idea to thought to conception. um like in any other area as well, chemistry, biology, when you do like material sciences, all of these areas, they require a lot of like production, iteration, and those timelines can be really long. But for computer science, the beauty is that you can go from like thought to idea to conception in a weekend. Like if you have an app that you want to build or an idea that you think you can optimize, you could literally sit down for like 20-30 hours and you can bang it out, and you can test it immediately. You don't have to like wait for paths to come in. You don't have to, there's so much like red tape that's removed. It's very, very quick. So because of that, I think it like a lot of like as an engineer, I'm always thinking about like what are the problems I face every day, how can I optimize it, and then like do I see a product that's there. So right now, like I'd say for me personally, I don't have any concrete ideas, so you never know. But at the same time, like I might have an idea 6 months from now or like 2 months from now, and then have a startup in another month. So, but I have been, I think, as I was saying earlier about like finding what to do with those 150 hours that you have outside of work. So I've definitely helped out a lot of startups over the years. So again, it's like one of those things that I find startups to be quite intriguing, especially like when you're entering on the ground floor, when it's like just you're one of your friends and they're like, hey man, can you help me with this little thing? You end up learning the most. Um, and so there's a lot of startups I've been involved with, but none that I would call my own just yet. But you never know.
So I have a question for you. You mentioned the
Yeah.
interview process that you had to go through to get your internship at Google. Could you
Yeah.
like do that? What did they ask you? What was the whole process like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Um, okay, so again, this is going to be specific to computer science. We're going to be yeah, because that's where I have the most experience. A lot of different jobs will have different kinds of interviews. So specifically for computer science, we have what's called the technical interview, and they're structured in like about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the company. So you get like for one interview, you get 45 minutes. And then usually it'll be 1 to 2 questions, direct programming. So they're like what I call programming puzzles. So it's like you're going to be given a small challenge, and that challenge can usually be broken up into 2 or 3 parts. And then they just want to see how well you think through the problem, and then how well do you execute. So at Google, there's 5 things that we rate a candidate on. The first is communication. Is the candidate able to like talk and communicate the ideas they're having? The second is design. So like before we jump into programming directly, this is a problem that a lot of engineers have. Once you get good at programming, you're given a problem, you're like bang, 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 here's the code. But then all of a sudden the code doesn't work and you get no points in your interview because you never described to the interviewer like how you wanted to tackle the problem at all. So one, I don't know if your idea was correct, and two, your code is not correct. So now you get like all of a sudden like you're like just out in the water and you didn't do well in your interview. But if you start off and said, hey, okay, so this is the problem, I think we should do this, this, and this to solve it, and I'm thinking maybe this is not the best approach, but I'm going to start with this, and then we can optimize it in this way. And already like you've laid out a design, you've showed me you can talk, so you've already checked off your first 2 boxes, and then after these so like we haven't even talked about coding yet, right, out of the 2 rubrics. And then we come on to the 3 coding parts, which are efficacy, data structures and algorithms, and let me think. Efficacy, data structures, algorithm design, communication. Oh, and I think just complexity. So like yeah, and then I'll explain it. So efficacy is just like how quickly were you able to do it. So in an interview, we want to be able to ask a question, then we want to be able to like ask follow-up questions to that first question. So some candidates will not be quick enough and they'll end up struggling with the first part of the question for 45 minutes. So they would score poorly on efficacy. Then you have your data structures and algorithms, which is that certain problems should definitely be solved using a certain approach. And if you don't use it, then that like shows a lack of understanding of both the problem and some core concepts. So that's what we're talking about with data structures and algorithms. And then the last one is complexity. And complexity is basically like in programming, there's a lot of ways to do anything. There's like anything you take, there's probably like 5 different ways you can write it. But usually there's one simplest way, like one way that makes intuitive sense. And so if the candidate is able to remove unnecessary code from their like when they're writing code, and write the simplest code, then they score the best on complexity as well. And like complexity is important because when we are writing code for ourselves, like when we're just writing a project, then it doesn't matter what the code looks like because no one's ever going to read it. But at a company like Google with like over 1 billion lines of code, every line of code could be a possible bug. And if no one else can understand that line of code, then it's not going to be useful to Google. So you can write the best code and it actually works, but if no one else understands it, then it's not a good piece of code. So those are the 5 things that you want to like think about. I can go over them again. It's like design, communication, efficacy, data structures and algorithms, and complexity. So like you can write it down next to you and be like, hey, am I checking off all of those boxes? And then you're going to be given this puzzle. The way that I would suggest preparing for those interviews is that there's websites like HackerRank, LeetCode. They have a bunch of these like programming interview questions. And at the end of the day, I'd say there's only about 20 or so unique questions, and everything else is like some spin on those base questions. So if you've solved enough questions, you're most likely going to like have some inkling of an idea of how to solve it. Because usually what they do is they'll take 2 or 3 questions and they'll like mash them up together so that the solution isn't exactly the same, but it's like the 3 techniques that those individual problems needed. Yeah, and then finally, like, just be confident. I think the biggest thing that candidates can go wrong on is that sometimes you don't know the answer and you're like, oh man, I have no idea what it is. And they're just like in their head. But come out of your head and start talking to the interviewer. Be like, hey, okay, so this is what I'm thinking. I think we should do it this way, but I know there's a flaw with it and I can't quite get past this hurdle. Do you think that you could help me? And usually like interviewers want to give you a hint, because if you have an interview where you sit with the candidate for 45 minutes and they didn't say anything, you didn't say anything, then it's a waste of their time, waste of your time. No one learned anything about each other. Instead, when you start talking and you start like making it a conversation rather than an interview, you already like have scored one, high on that communications checkbox, but also two, you've made the interview comfortable. The interviewer is going to try and help you. They want to give you a hint, and they can, help you move forward in the interview.
So one last question I had. So we've heard about
Yeah.
this perfect, dreamy Google life you have. But as Sundar Pichai has rightly said, if you don't fail sometimes, you're not being ambitious enough. Were there moments
Mhm.
in your life where you were down, and how did you bounce back from those rough patches in life?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I haven't. I've been fortunate enough to not have like major setbacks in my life. Um, in Yeah, like for me, there's always been more like tumultuous moments in my life where I feel like the direction that I want to take is uncertain. And to me, those are the moments where like life is toughest, because when I don't have a goal to work towards, when I don't have a direction that I want to go into, then it really like makes me question a lot of things, a lot of decisions. Really makes me like feel down and out, like, hey, like why don't you have direction right now? Like where is your life going? And in a lot of those moments, I think for me, like a lot of what helps is taking a step back from the problem, realizing that your problem is only a small part of whatever like your life is, and then like really looking at that big picture. This can be with, like not doing well in an exam, not like getting that project you wanted to work on, not getting a promotion. Like there's like definitely like small setbacks, like you think that you have like worked hard for something and it doesn't fall out the same way. So the biggest like problem for me is like when I get involved in the problem, when I make it my whole life, or like I'm really in that bubble, it's really hard to like snap out and look at it from a bigger perspective. But for me, what really helps is that, hey, take a step back. Like you got this. Look at it from a perspective of what went wrong, what did you do good, what can we do better, and just like tackling like the smaller things, like chipping away at that problem, is really like what helps me feel focused and grounded, and then also again help me find that direction that I wanted, that I thought I was lacking. So um I'm trying to think of like, yeah, because to me, like when I think of my failures now, retrospectively, they don't seem that big, because you like, okay, you see like you have come to this point and you're successful, so no failure seems like a big failure. And because there's always like those small things that are always on your mind. Hey, I didn't like get that exam score I wanted, I didn't get that grade I wanted, or like at work, for example, like Google has like 6-month performance cycles. So every performance cycle you get some rating and you're like, hey, I worked way harder than that rating. Or so there's just like small minor setbacks, but every time you're like, okay, so like what went wrong? Because it's not usually like it's you worked hard, but did you work smart? So like just like different approaches to looking at that same issue, um, and figuring out what you can change, and like small optimizations. And I think, I guess one of the big things I've also been fortunate about is just having a really good support structure. When I moved out of college into like San Francisco and worked at Google, I still live with two of my best friends from college. I have like 10 of my best friends from college move out to SF with me. So like just having a support structure of really good friends that you can rely on to like be able to talk to about anything really, like has really made life a lot easier for me.
Before Sarkari
Yeah.
concludes, I just want to say something that I relate to a lot. I've always had this in my mind: work smart, not only work hard. And you saying that
Yeah.
just gives me hope and belief. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, yeah. Even in college, I would say that I was not one of those kids that went to every class. I went to no classes. Like literally, I think with CS, we're so lucky that in general, all of the resources we need are always available online. And CMU professors were really good about posting notes online. So I actually felt that I learned way more from reading the notes that they were posting than actually going to lecture, because I'm a much more a visual learner than an auditory learner. So when I'm listening in lecture, it's really easy for me to zone out. Because anyway, like as a professor, you have to not like just cater to, he's not just catering to me, right? He's catering to every student in the class, and they only can move forward once they know like everyone in the class is understood. So for example, they like explain a concept, give an example, and I've maybe understood that concept. but then there's another student that needs to ask like one more question, or like they need one more example, and then the professor is giving two more examples. In that time, like they've lost me. I've zoned out, and then by the time I'm zoning back in, it's like halfway through the lecture and I've missed a bunch of concepts they're going to teach anyway. So for me, what I learned is that I can go and like spend 10 minutes going to lecture, 10 minutes coming back from lecture, an hour at lectures, an hour and 20 minutes, or I could just read the notes in 25 minutes. And so um, it's all about like figuring out what works for you. For a lot of people, like if they don't go to lecture, if they don't hear something or like see something on the board, then it's really hard for them to retain it. For me, it was the opposite. For me, like that wasn't helping at all, but the notes were helping a lot. So it's just like about finding what works for you, and like and then using that to optimize your time. Yeah.
Very honestly, thank you so much, Shashank, sir, for taking out time. It has been a very, very inspirational session, like enlightening us on the job application process for Google, talking about all the technical aspects of a graduate student's life who's pursuing a successful career. And not to mention, you made us very, very excited about being a software engineer ourselves, since we are budding computer scientists. We have a similar
Yeah.
kind of dream, and you gave us a lot of tips for our computer science journey. So thank you so much for that. You might not think so, but you did help us streamline our point of view towards computer science and the process that we will be following. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for reaching out, coming
Yeah, I would
here.
just like to end on something. If any of you guys in the interview, or also anyone watching, feel free to like find me on LinkedIn, or like find me anywhere, get my email. And I'm always happy to chat. I like love inspiring people to be computer scientists. I think it's the job that is going to make the most impact in the coming future, like for you guys and for the world. So like if you guys ever have any questions, ever have any like just like want to chat with someone in the industry, feel free to reach out. I actually do a lot of like personal like tutoring for high school and college students and like master students on the side. Like so I have a lot of like context about what is the best approach to like take computer science to make it at the end of the day, like once you hit that spark, once that like computer science bug is in you, I think it's really hard to get out. It happened with me, so I speak with personal experience. So like if there's anyone else like watching, and you just like want to talk, feel free to hit me up.
Definitely will do.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you so much.
just a quick reminder to our viewers, please help this cause. There's a link down over here. Just donate and be safe and be cautious. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank.
Thanks everyone.